What is up, everybody? Welcome to my top 10 anime of the year 2017 video. For those that aren't aware, I started with the year 2021 and have been going back every single year and picking my top 10 of each of them. And I have to say, 2017 was probably by far the most difficult one for me to do. There was just so many fantastic anime titles that released that year that I came down with a list of 26 titles. And after cutting as many as I could, I still ended up with 17 and then went through the tearful process of cutting that down to 10. And after second guessing myself over and over again, I've decided on this list and I'm sticking with it. As per usual, if you have a top 10 anime list of 2017, I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments down below. So with that said, let's jump into this year's list of 2017 top 10 anime. Kicking things off with my number 10, I have Magical Circle Guru Guru. Yes, this series is a special series for me. This is a series that I had so much fun watching it with my brother. Just so many laughs in here. For those that aren't aware, this is technically a remake of the original anime adaptation of the series. It was originally a manga, they adapted it, and now this is a new adaptation for 2017, and they definitely spruced up the series. Definitely made it more modern visually, although still holding on to that old style that it used to have. Unfortunately, I think that's the reason why I didn't really hear many people talking about the show when it aired. It's just it had that old style to it. It looks very childish, but by no means is it really in that realm. It's got some childish humor in there, but it's got a lot of adult humor too. It's capturing the essence of RPGs. It's essentially a comedy that's putting the characters in almost like a JRPG, old school JRPG setting. And so I will say that a lot of the humor is going to be around that concept. If you've played old JRPGs, you're going to get a lot of the jokes here. It really does hit on things like Dragon Quest and stuff like that, really capturing that style. Having the goofy little prompts come up with text every now and then. It's just a lot of goofiness in that regard. But the story centers around a guy named Nikke who has been decided to be the hero of this world, and he's quickly slingshot off to the castle where he's told that he's the next hero. And he's assigned to travel with this girl named Kukuri who's a magic user. And the two of them set off on their journey to go defeat the big evil bad guy. And like I said, along the way, you're just getting all these goofy jokes, all these JRPG jokes, the dungeons they go to, the people they meet. It's all a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun with it. Yes, there's hit and miss jokes here, but you're talking about 24 episodes where pretty much every single episode, I was laughing out loud, like loud. As per usual, comedy is subjective, but I think if you get a good laugh out of it within its first 3 episodes, you're probably going to have a lot of fun watching this series. The characters are great. Yeah, there's some characters I couldn't stand, like the old man. I couldn't stand him. But a lot of the characters are really fantastic, and Kukuri is just super adorable. There is a sense here that Nikke does like Kukuri. He thinks that she's super cute. And so that does play into the jokes a lot, and that he just can't really stand himself around her. And yes, she has the same seiyuu as Shamiko and Roxy, so I absolutely adore her voice. I didn't realize until recently that I kind of draw some parallels between Kukuri and Shamiko. With all that said, it is a fantastic series. It has some really great animation there as well, even though it does have that older style to it. There's a lot of nostalgia here, great comedy, great characters, and I loved every bit of it. Moving on to my number 9, I have Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid. This series was absolutely fantastic, which was a huge surprise for me at the time because when I heard that Kyoto Animation was adapting the manga, I went out and bought the manga, and I didn't like it. I wasn't a huge fan of it. But for some reason, Kyoto Animation has a way of really kind of taking something and making it so much better. Visually, yes, Kyoto Animation knocks it out of the park. It visually looks amazing. And yes, there's all these little moments where Kyoto Animation goes, yeah, let's have some fun with the animation. They do some crazy combat sequences between these overpowered dragons, and it's all a lot of fun. But there was a crazy thing that was within this show is that while most of it was shenanigans around dragons living with humans, there was a lot of these crazy action pieces, and yes, the comedy was gold. But at the core of it was heart. There was a story in here that I wasn't really expecting that really threw me off. It essentially opens up with an office lady named Kobayashi who, after getting in a drunk stupor, kind of wanders off into the hillside where she ends up finding a wounded dragon. And she saves the dragon. And still being a little tipsy, she agrees to let the dragon live with her. And as she finds out, this dragon shows up in this maid outfit and decides that she wants to stay there. And where you get the heart of the story is in Kobayashi. She's always lived alone. She's an office worker. She goes to work, does her work, comes home tired, goes to sleep, goes to work, works herself to death, comes home, falls asleep. But now with this dragon in her home who really likes Kobayashi, and later you have Kana, who's another dragon that starts living there, Kobayashi learns the importance of family. What it's like to have somebody that wants you to come home, somebody that's waiting for you, somebody that's there for you. It makes her realize the importance of family, the importance of friends. And this is stuff that she's kind of discovering for the first time as an adult. And that heart in there, amongst all the crazy shenanigans and action and comedy that just had me laughing out loud, that surprised me. It all kind of led up to this really great ending. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid has definitely cemented itself as one of my favorite Kyoto Animation series of all time. At the same time, I will admit that it's a huge departure from your typical Kyoto Animation. Typically, Kyoto Animation is more slice of life, sometimes having a little bit of magic, but this is definitely going full-on comedy with that heart, and definitely a different style than they're used to. But yeah, I cannot recommend it enough. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, go watch it. Moving on to my number 8, I have Land of the Lustrous. This is a series that, my gosh, where's the second season? Where is the second season of this show? Land of the Lustrous is phenomenal. It is the thing that pretty much put Orange on the map. This was a series that we heard that they put so much work into actually pre-production of it. Yes, unfortunately, it's CGI. But what Orange did is that they spent like an entire year putting together all the assets to create this CGI series, putting all their effort into creating what is definitely unique about it. The story centers around all these different gems. They're people that are sort of the personification of different styles of gems. Jade, diamonds, all those kind of things, and you can sort of see that their bodies are actually made of it. And namely, what you see immediately is their hair. And like I said, they put a lot of effort into being able to render that. And they definitely pulled it off. These visually beautiful styles in the characters itself, very thin characters. But each of these gems are protecting the shrine that's headed by Kongo-sensei. And every now and then these moon dwellers will come into the land and they have to fight them off. And over time, you sort of learn more about the gems themselves, what they're doing there, more information about what are these invaders that keep coming to take them away. It's all kind of includes in some really interesting stuff later on. Now, the unfortunate thing is, like I mentioned at the very beginning, we need a second season so bad. Like, there was so many great reveals at the end of this first season, and no more. We haven't seen any more of it, and it's a huge letdown because I started getting really fascinated by this world. I was kind of drawn in by the beauty of the CGI and the character designs themselves, and what ended up grabbing me in the end, what really made me fall in love with the series, was all those great reveals at the very end that really had me intrigued about, okay, whoa, what is actually going on in this world? Like, this is cool. This is very interesting. And like I said, nothing in 5 years. And I'm heartbroken. I was really hoping that once Orange finished off doing this whole thing with Beastars, that we'd go back to Land of the Lustrous because, again, they spent a lot of time on the assets. I have to say, though, don't let the CGI put you off. I know a lot of people don't like CGI shows. This one is absolutely beautiful. And the action scenes, what they did with the camera work, the visual perspectives, everything was phenomenal. I highly recommend Land of Lustrous, and I don't know why I haven't jumped in the manga yet. Moving on to my number 7, I have Made in Abyss. Yes, this series it's adventure incarnate. If you love adventure, look no further than Made in Abyss. This is a series that just feeds you intrigue. It feeds you what you want to see next. You basically embody the main character, Riko, who is traveling into this abyss, and you want to see more. Like I said, it follows Riko, who lives in this town that circles this abyss. It's this big hole that goes deep into the earth itself, and people travel down there in order to get artifacts from it and bring it back to the surface. And Riko at some point acquires a letter that was written by her mother, who went down to the abyss. And seeking to find out what happened to her mother, she decides to travel down there along with this relic, which is Regu. Now, the scary thing about the abyss itself is the curse. There's this curse about the abyss that whenever you go down a certain length, you can't come back up without it sort of messing with you. People die trying to get back to the surface. It's almost like if you were to go down in the ocean, you go so far and you have that kind of pressure that builds up, and if you submerge too quickly, you'll die. It's sort of the same thing. So essentially going down deeper and deeper into this abyss, you get to the point where there's no return. And during Riko's travels, she ends up meeting other people that are in the abyss, other travelers within there, people that actually live inside the abyss itself. And every single thing, every creature, every plant, everything they run into is just pure gold. This writer has an insanely creative mind. And everything that is revealed, everything that Riko runs into, I'm fascinated by. I stated when I first did a review of this series that it's sort of like Ghibli-esque. The beautiful and realized world that's just completely unknown is so well put together. And every character that Riko runs into is super fascinating. In the first season, we had Ozen. Ozen was an incredible character, super intimidating, super dark, super scary. But at Ozen's core, when you start getting into Ozen, how insanely twisted she is, She's a fantastic character. At some point, you realize what kind of makes her tick, and it's super fascinating, and I completely fell in love with her as a character. And then yes, later on, getting into Nanashi, who turns into being one of my favorite characters in anime history. Nanashi is just absolutely fantastic. And yes, warning, similar to Nanashi and similar to most everything else in this show, extremely hard to watch show at times. This show does not hold things back. When things get grim, they get grim. This writer doesn't hold anything back. If something terrible happens, you're going to know about it, and you're going to watch it, and you're going to enjoy it. Otherwise, you're going to shut it off. This writer gets very unpleasant at times. The story in the world and what the characters go through is very unpleasant at times, and this writer has zero filters. But even still, even despite that, I highly recommend Made in Abyss. Please go watch it. Moving on to my number 6, I have Kado, The Right Answer. And I've kind of talked about this one before in my anime you may have missed. It's kind of one of those series that I keep talking about it, even though some people don't like it. It is unfortunately a show similar to what I was talking with Blind Illustrious. It's a series that I think a lot of people didn't check out. Again, mainly because it's full CGI. But even still, this series captured me. It opens up with this weird object appearing in Japan. And from this object, this unknown person comes out and starts to offer their intelligence. They're this life form that's more intelligent than humans, and they want to offer up their intelligence to help humankind live a little bit more comfortably. Things like endless resources. Mankind would be so much better off if pretty much everybody had this source of power that's endless. Nobody would be fighting over resources anymore. And what kind of comes from this is you sort of see the perspective of people that have to come there and talk with him, the negotiators basically. At the same time, from the background, you're seeing all the different nations responding to Japan basically having this person there that is offering all this knowledge. Despite the fact that this one being is offering everything to mankind, you still have different nations not wanting everybody to have that. And this continues on as you see each of these things this person comes forward and presents to humankind, and humankind has to sort of debate about what that would mean to humankind. And that was the aspect that I love so much about it. The intrigue about what is this being? What are they doing there? What is mankind going to do? But not only that, the thing that really grabbed me and what had me kind of at the edge of my seat every single week when the show came out was that I sort of found myself visualizing what this would be like if it was actually real. Don't get me wrong, I think they did a good job of actually portraying what different, political groups would be thinking about this. But I had a point in which I was really sort of inserting myself into the world itself. A good example is this one moment where they wanted to broadcast worldwide to every single citizen of the world this opportunity. There was this box, and when they opened the box on this live broadcast, you seeing what's in that box on your television, wherever you're viewing from it, all you have to do is see what's in this box. It would unlock a portion of your brain that would change how you think. There's the ongoing argument that mankind doesn't use most of their brain, and this would give you the ability to unlock that. And I thought to myself, would I want to see it? Like if I seen this on my television and I'm watching this live broadcast, would I want to view it? Or would I want to DVR it and then check to see if it affected anybody in a negative way? That's the stuff that really had me intrigued. Again, despite the fact that it's CGI, despite the fact that, yes, I would argue the characters aren't that developed. The characters are kind of the same as they were from the beginning as they were the end. There's a couple characters that kind of get some development, but overall, this is about intrigue. It's about the mystery of the world itself, what this alien is bringing, and what it means to the world itself. I found it extremely fascinating. And again, I was probably one of the few people that really love this show. I highly recommend checking it out. I had a lot of fun watching it. Kind of the right answer. Moving on to my number 5, I have Recreators. Yes, I absolutely loved Recreators. This is another one that I think that had some mixed responses from the fandom. And for me, I loved it to death. What this series is about is you have this point in Japan where certain characters from novels and anime and visual novels start appearing in the real world. And what you kind of have from this is you have obviously the chaos that would come from that, having, villains and stuff from novels and stuff coming to our world and causing havoc. But you also have this kind of twist in there where you do have certain characters from different visual novels, light novels, and mangas that are able to sort of confront their creators. Would they be happy about where they came from? Why would you put me through so much suffrage in my world? Why did you write my life that way? Those kind of questions come up as you sort of have certain groups banding together, good sides, bad sides, ultimately in the end having this huge conflict. It was a very interesting concept that I really did like. It's essentially reverse isekai and confronting your creators. In this world, in our world, if you think about it, everybody that writes a light novel and stuff, they're essentially a god that's creating a world and creating all the facets and creating the people within it. They're breathing life into a story. Again, like I said, it's almost as if now you have those creations coming to confront their god. And I really was fascinated with how a lot of that stuff played out. You have the magical girl that realizes that their world, whenever they shoot their laser beam thing, it doesn't destroy and almost kill people. Yes, you have the dating sim girl that now has to address the fact that this entire world of people has seen her in this naughty visual novel. But again, at its heart, it's the anger that sometimes comes from these creations. The anger of what they've been put through. And again, that's a lot of the stuff that I really did love about the series. It visually looked fantastic. There was some really fantastic action scenes. Swana Hiroyuki did some amazing music, and I highly suggest checking it out. Unfortunately, this was one that got stuck on Amazon. I don't think anybody else has started to stream it yet, and it hasn't had a Blu-ray release, but if you can find it, definitely check it out. I highly would suggest Recreators. Moving on to my number 4, I have The Eccentric Family second season. I absolutely adore this series. This is a kind of an interesting story for me, honestly. I watched the first season of the series and I absolutely hated it. I couldn't understand it. The characters did the stupidest things. I couldn't find myself relating to the characters at all. They made no sense to me. Well, later on, we had the announcement of the second season, and so I thought I'd give the first season a second shot. And I came into it from a different perspective, and when I did, I found that I fell in love with the entire franchise. I absolutely love the characters. I love the world. I love the art style. It looks absolutely unique and beautiful. And it was all done by PA Works, so it just had a visual style to it that just really popped. Now, to explain why I struggled, and now I love it. The story opens up in Japan where we have tanukis living amongst humans. They, of course, disguise themselves as humans and walk around. And additionally, you have the existence of things like tengu and stuff. Now, what they explain early on, and it's the thing that I didn't really get the first time I watched it, is that the tanuki have fool's blood. They make decisions and they do things that are sort of foolish. And a lot of the focus goes in on Yasabaru and his family. And you find out that recently their father was cooked to death. You learn about this group called the Friday Fellows. They all came together and they have this tradition of cooking a tanuki. And unfortunately, this one celebration, they cook his father. And the thing I couldn't find out is as it went along is I couldn't understand why he was so willing to forgive Benton, somebody that was actually present there. She consumed him. But remember the aspect of the foolish blood. It's an aspect that they never really sort of explain, but at the same time, it is sort of them. It's sort of a character that you can't relate to, but you can sort of understand if you just put your mind to it. And after coming to that realization, I found myself really loving the show, really loving the characters, and really loving the atmosphere it sort of creates. Again, the foolish atmosphere. And this only gets better in the second season. I absolutely loved it to death. Finally got I got some of my retribution that I wanted so badly from the first season in the second season, so that was great as well. Getting a lot of closure of things that I didn't get in the first season. It did a really good job of taking everything that I was really kind of struggling with in the first season, putting some nice bookends to it, and wrapping things up in the very end in a way that I really did love. A lot of the show is, yes, about the foolishness of the tanuki, but it's also about family. It's about the bonds they have, and then ultimately how all these outside forces kind of affect them. Like I said, it's an absolutely beautiful show with an incredibly unique style to it that I just loved every minute of it. I cannot suggest enough. This is one of those shows that I never will do justice. Please go check out Eccentric Family, and yeah, Season 2 is fantastic. Moving on to my number 3, I have March Comes Like a Lion. Yes, this is a series that I cannot get enough of, and by this point, I'm heartbroken that we have not gotten a third season. I absolutely love the first season. I love the second season, and I need more of this show. For those that have not watched this show, it follows a 17-year-old shogi player, and he's extremely good at shogi. He at some point lost his family, and he was brought into a foster home, but he ended up finding that he was causing conflict in that family, so he decided to move out on his own. And what we find early on in this first season is there's a lot of focus on this character and how they're in a very dark place. They're isolated, they've lost their family. The foster family that he found himself in, like I said earlier, it felt like he was causing conflict, so he couldn't stay there. But there's one shining hope for this guy, despite the fact that he's so in darkness, and it does a great job of portraying that. This is done by Shaft, and they portrayed that dark place that he's in and showing that emotion of going in and out of that darkness. There's one ray of light, and that's the Kawamoto family. It's this family that lives across from the creek from where he has his apartment, and every now and then he'll go and visit that family. It's 3 sisters and a grandfather, and every time he comes there, they welcome him with open arms, and there's so much warmth and just this glow of light that he finds there. He describes it at some point that he feels it's almost painful going there, because it's almost like if it's a wintry day and you go onto a kotatsu and you have that warmth of the kotatsu, and then you go to leave it and you get back into that cold and that that painful feeling of leaving that warmth. He describes it that way, that his family is his warmth, his thing that kind of brings him out of it. But the story's not just about that. It gets into him actually playing shogi, really a lot about the expectations that are sort of placed upon him to win shogi. It is basically his way of surviving in the world. It gets into different matches that he gets into. It doesn't really get heavy into shogi itself. It's just the fact that he is a shogi player, and you do have these competitions he goes through, the different people that he plays against, and the people around him that play shogi as well. This is literally slice of life drama at its best. I can't really think of another slice of life drama that does it as good as March Comes In Like a Lion. I absolutely love this series. Every single one of the characters are fantastic. I absolutely adore the second season. Easily goes down as one of my favorite anime of all time. It's easy to say, go watch this series if you've not yet. Another one that I really just need to jump into the manga at this point. Again, we're 5 years out. We're not getting a sequel. Shaft is too busy making whatever they're making anymore. I don't like Shaft anymore. Shaft has just lost themselves. They're too busy with mobile games. Moving on to my number 2. This is easily, of all of the Gundam series, I have watched pretty much every single Gundam series. This is easily my favorite Gundam series of all time. Origins is sort of there, but yeah. Mobile Suit Gundam, Iron Blooded Orphans, second season. This series is absolutely phenomenal, and I cannot express enough how much I love this series. I've always loved Gundam. I love how Gundam lays things out. Usually it's very political and very focused on the main character and their involvement with that political strife that's happening. It's intergalactic. Tons of people fighting over different planets and space itself. But what I felt with Mobile Suit Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans is it almost grounded a bit. The unique thing about this particular Gundam series is that it actually had the writer and director behind the Hana series and Toradora. Yes, Mario Kata and Tatsuyuki Nagai. And what I felt that kind of did is it made the character stand out a lot more than your typical Gundam series. Not to say that Gundam has a problem with making characters, but I felt like Mario Kata really did make me fall in love with all these characters. And I don't usually find that with most Mobile Suit Gundam series. Most Mobile Suit Gundam series, yeah, you get a lot of focus on the main character, the main villain, the rival character, and then there's like a little bit of spread of some character developments here and there. But this one did characters perfectly. I loved so many of the characters, and I even actually liked the whole rival character aspect of this particular series. It essentially follows a group of guys that all work at this one facility on Mars. These are all essentially child slaves. They call them space rats, and at some point they rise up and they become the Tekkadan. And the Tekkadan end up being this group that sort of shifts the powers in the world itself. There's a lot of aspects of Martian independence and stuff that kind of starts coming into the forefront. And it all kind of seems to be swayed back and forth by the Tekkadan. So you do have this kind of group of orphan kids that all kind of rise up and use their own strength to change the world for the better, or the universe for the better. And I cannot say enough, this series had me from the first episode all the way to the 50th episode. I just loved every single minute of it. So many great characters, again, so many great moments in it. Fantastic animation. Probably easily one of my favorite Gundams of all time. The Gundam suit itself, which is Barbotos. It's more of a physical type. Has this big, huge sword claymore thing, rather than your usual kind of pew-pew type. And it all kind of culminated to easily some of the most heartbreaking moments at the very end of it. I was crushed by the end of this show. And that kind of shows me how much I love the characters so much. I loved so many characters that once everything started going kind of downhill toward the later part of the series, I was heartbroken. I was tearful. I wanted these people to be happy in the end, and it just didn't seem like for a lot of it wanted to give me that. I'll just say it, Dainsleif. The Dainsleif. The moment the Dainsleif show up, I'm like, no, please stop. Please stop. These things scare me. It's so good. It's a fantastic series. I love it to death. Please go check out Mobile Suit Gundam Iron Blood Over. Whenever I talk about Gundam, that's usually one of the ones I recommend the most. I mean, besides like War in the Pocket, and like I said, technically Gundam Origins, it's a phenomenal series, and I love it to death. I think Mario Kata and the team at Sunrise did a fantastic job of it. And that all culminates to my number 1 favorite anime of 2017. Yes, One Room. I absolutely loved One Room. That was a series that really did break the molds of storytelling. And I think when it first was coming out, the thing that I kept telling people was that, you know, shifting from this whole vantage point of sort of a third-person perspective of watching storytelling, you're always seeing characters from the side as they portray to each other. But One Room took it to a different perspective. The first person perspective, showing what the character sees and experiences as they walk into a room. I'm just joking, as usual. I always do this with the first one. I think I usually always do it with the first ones. I still love One Room. I think it's very unique. I had a lot of fun with it. But no, Shogun Roku Rakushinju, second season, absolutely one of the greatest anime of all time. This is easily in my top 10 favorite anime of all time. I think even in my top 5 anime of all time. I cannot say enough. Please go watch Shogun Roku Rakushinju. This is a series that took slice of life drama to a whole nother level. I kind of mentioned earlier with March Comes in Like a Lion, but I think even still, this one takes the cake. And I think the main reason why, and you see this with the second season of the series, is this is a full life story. This is a story from somebody when they're very young, all the way to the point where they're just old and decrepit. It's their full life story. It's a story about Rakugo itself, which for those who don't know what Rakugo is a performance that somebody goes onto a stage alone. They sit down on their knees on a pillow, and they perform an entire story by themselves. They voice each of the characters in the story. They'll often pivot to show different perspectives. And this is something that's been passed down by generation to generation. And in this particular story, we're falling at this point in which it's going from the 8th generation of Rakugo performer to the 9th generation. In the earlier segments of the series, you're seeing how essentially this one master of Rakugo takes on 2 people to train. And eventually, as we get into the second season, you sort of see that shift in the 2 characters. There's Yatoro and Yakumo. And Yatoro is sort of the one that wants to change Rakugo. He obviously sees, this is Showa, he sees that times are changing. The cultures of outside of Japan are sort of infesting into Japan. It's sort of changing people's taste in entertainment. And he wants to change that. He wants to make it more comedic. He wants to get out there. Whereas Yakumo is more for tradition. He wants to keep things the same way they are. And you sort of have these 2 characters as they're growing up together and the conflicts they face. And those conflicts, it's so good. Like the writing in the series is so good. So many great impactful moments in these characters' lives that really did hit me. The conflicts certain characters face, is the mistakes they make, the things that really drive them and sort of also destroy them inside. The amount of emotional impact they get into Yakumo later on, and how like sort of these ghosts in his life are constantly haunting him, was so well portrayed. Studio Dean did a phenomenal job on the show. I mean, this is Studio Dean, Fate Stay Night. That Dean, they did this show, and it is absolutely beautifully portrayed. Specifically, the Rakugo performances themselves. Now, again, a person going onto stage, sitting on their knees, and just acting out a performance. But they pulled it off so well because the different perspective shots, different subtle movements they make, the sweat on their face, all these different things tells the story, tells what the character's going through at the time, if they're nervous, if they're worked up, are they getting too much in the performance, are they getting too little into the performance. All these things were so well portrayed by Studio Dean that it took these very basic performances on a stage to a whole nother level. The stories themselves were being told, the stories were great, but it was telling another story at the same time of what the character's going through on the stage. I can't say enough. Please go watch Shogun Roku Rakushinju. It is a phenomenal series, and I highly suggest it. And that's it. That's my top 10 favorite anime of 2017. Like I said, my honorable mention list is humongous, so we'll try to go through this pretty quickly. The ones that I really cried over taking off my list is, the first one is Blood Blockade Battlefront and Beyond. I love the style and the feel of Blood Blockade Battlefront and Beyond. It is a really cool story. It's super weird. It's kind of in the realm of, it's in our world, but at the same time, it's got this demon twist to it. And I love it to death. I've always loved the style of it. And the second season just, like the title will believe, took it above and beyond what it originally was. I love the series. I hope we get another season of it, but it's just got a style and a unique feel of its own. Tsuki ga Kirei, I think, is probably easily one of my favorite kind of puppy love romance stories. Very young kids learning about love. And it had a great visual style to it. It was an original series that I think they did a phenomenal job on. Really loved the characters, was super cute. Gave me a lot of nostalgia for childhood and stuff like that. I highly recommend it. Natsume's Book of Friend, Season 6. That was the only reason I didn't put it on my list, because it's the 6th season, come on. But no, I always loved Natsume's Book of Friend. It is a fantastic series. It has so much heart in there. And even with the 6th season, after 6 seasons of the series, the stories still hit every time. Every time I watched one of these episodes, it would have some short story that they go through, and every time it either had me emotional, it had me bawling my eyes out, it had some sort of emotion that would well up inside me. I cannot express enough. The series has always been phenomenal, and I highly recommend it. Interview with Monster Girls. I loved this show. It was so great. It was one of the few Monster Girls shows that I absolutely adored. The characters are so great. The visual style is great. It had so many cute little stories in there. It wasn't so much about your typical Monster Girl fetishes. It was so much more about just kids that are Monster Girls that are living in a school and just kind of the troubles they face, and having this one teacher that sort of tries to help them with their issues. It was a fantastic series. Konosuba Season 2. Yeah, this is probably the one that everybody's angry that's not on my list. I did not find the second season as great as the first season. I still love it. I still absolutely love Konosuba. It had some lulling points in the second season. I'm still looking forward to the third season and the movie and the spin-off for Megumin. Megumin, best girl, by the way. It wasn't enough for the second season to bump anything else off my list. Ori Monogatari was fantastic as well. And again, this is kind of similar to Natsume's Book of Friends. This is like a huge long-running series, so it's more difficult for me to put in my list. I typically don't like to put shows on my list that's been going on for like 60-plus episodes. But it's still fantastic. It was a great wrap-up to that particular story, and I highly recommend the Monogatari series through and through, hands down. One of my favorite series of all time. And then yes, Recovery MMO Junkie. This one I almost put in my list, mainly because Recovery MMO Junkie hit me personally. It's a series about some girl that's kind of almost not really a shut-in, but she's sort of a outcast of society. She spends most of her time playing MMOs, and like I said, I kind of relate a lot to her. It's that feeling of kind of just not really wanting to get involved with things outside the world. Just you're enjoying your time playing an MMO, and it starts to get in some romance and stuff, and I really did love it. And like I said, a lot of relatability to what she was going through and everything. Some other ones, like I joked before, yes, technically I did like One Room. Kimono Friends was absolutely fantastic. Onihei was great. Sakana How to Raise a Boy and Girlfriend second season. I didn't really like how some things ended, but I still loved it. Tsurezuri Children, please go watch that. Oh my gosh, that show is so great. Junie Tyson, I did enjoy. Konohana Katan was super cute. Yuki Yuna's a Hero, Sumi chapter, I really did enjoy. That was kind of before everything started going downhill for the Yuki Yuna adaptations. And then finally, Welcome to the Ballroom. I'm going to stop there. There's too many good shows in 2017. But I hope you guys enjoyed this top 10 list of the best shows of 2017, according to me. If your show is not on here, it's not that it's a bad show. It's just I didn't like it as much as the other shows on here. But like I said earlier, make sure to let me know down in the comments down below what your picks are for your favorite of 2017. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already so you can get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top lists just like this. Additionally, if you like this content and you would like to support it, we have a Patreon link, a tips link, and a super thanks button down below. I greatly appreciate everybody that considers, and y'all take care.